Sanıyorum başlayabiliriz. Değerli arkadaşlar, değerli iş adamlarımız, değerli yöneticiler. For just two sentences of introduction, I'll keep in Turkish, then I'll switch to English. Öncelikle yeni bir platform kullanıyoruz. Dolayısıyla bazı aksaklıklar olabilir platformda. Bu nedenle şimdiden affınıza sığınıyoruz. Herkese günaydınlar ve hoş geldiniz diyorum. Az önce bahsettiğim üzere İngilizce devam etmeyi düşünüyoruz seminerimize. Dolayısıyla eğer bu konuyla ilgili katılımcılarımızdan farklı bir düşünce varsa, bazı noktalarda Romanca sıkıntı, İngilizce ile ilgili sıkıntı yaşadıklarını düşünürlerse lütfen chat kısmından bildirsinler. Burçin Bey, doğru mu söylüyorum? Chat kısmından bu tip sıkıntıları iletebilirler.
Tabii ki. Tabii.
Okay, so good morning everyone. It's quite difficult in this, new platform that we are trying to keep this activity. For our dear friends from Deloitte, maybe it's quite familiar. Being for first time for us, maybe there will be some, shortcuts that maybe we'll need your help. I asked the participants in Turkish introduction if they have any problem with the language of the presentations and the regarding the platform whatsoever. They can write on the chat part. So as I mentioned during our preparatory meetings with our friends from Deloitte, I'm quite far away from the subject. Actually, I'm quite curious what they are going to tell us about this new system. But it's so welcome, their intervention to inform the business community about what's coming up, that I would like to express my thanks to, first of all, Burçin, my dear friend, for this initiative, and the Deloitte and all the participants from Deloitte for their reserving their precious time for informing us. So as I mentioned, I'll keep it so short. Thank you very much, Burçin and our friends from Deloitte. And I'm looking forward to hear what's coming up in the new accounting system, which is affecting all the companies in kind of like 2 years. For the timing, it will be for the big scale companies. Then gradually it will come down to all the levels of the companies that they have to apply these new regulations. So the floor is yours, Burçin, and the ladies and gentlemen from Deloitte. Thank you very much.
Güven Bey, çok teşekkür ederiz. Çok sağ olun açılış konuşmanız için, destekleriniz için. Kısaca ben de önce Türkçe başlayacağım, sonra İngilizceye geçeceğim. Kısaca anlatmak gerekirse, evet, son 4 yıldır Deloitte olarak, özellikle hani Türk masasını temsil ettiğim için ben Deloitte'da, Türk müşterilerimize özel eventler yapıyoruz. Bu 4. eventimiz Güven Bey ve tüm arkadaşlar. Ve genellikle biz bu toplantılarda güncel konuları tartışmak, güncel konularda sizin bilgi ihtiyaçlarınızı gidermek istiyoruz. Bugünkü toplantımızda 8 arkadaşımız var. Çeşitli sunumlar yapacak. Güven Bey'in dediği gibi konulardan bir tanesi oldukça önemli. Safety raporlaması konusunda. Bizim ülkemizde, Türkiye'de olan bir raporlama tarzı bu ama Romanya'ya yeni geliyor. Detaylarını tartıştıkça göreceğiz. Evet, aynen Güven Bey'in dediği gibi önce büyük firmalar, daha sonra küçük firmalarda belli bir dönem içerisinde bu yürürlüğe konacak. Ancak tek konumuz bu değil. Farklı konularda da bize gelen sorular dahilinde ben arkadaşlara çalışmalarını bir takım sunumlar hazırlamalarını istedim. Bunlar tax insentifleri. Bundan sonrası İngilizceye dönüyorum bir parça. So we have diversified topics on the table today, and we have 8 friends and 8 specialists from Deloitte who will provide insight from different matters. So firstly, we will talk about tax incentives. Ana Petrescu will present the topic, and then Luisa will talk about tax facilities and tax amnesty topic. And then we have the EU funds and state aid topic that will be brought on the table by Paul. And Yunus will speak about transfer pricing during the COVID periods. And Mihaela, traditionally, as usual, she will present the immigration topic, and she will have the questions, if any. And then we have Monica, and she will talk about workforce challenges. Especially, we have experiencing in the past years certain shortages on the workforce, and there are a lot of topics to be discovered over there, and Monica will touch upon these subjects. And here it comes to Victoria with the safety topic. So we preserve the most important topic towards the back, and Victoria will appear with the safety reporting, and she will mention about what has to be done by the companies in Romania. And Cosmin Paun is a specialist on accounting advisory, and he will also bring some use cases to our attention, and he will discuss on the accounting challenges. So I would like to give the ground first to Ana Petrescu. So we would like to hear from her on the tax incentives. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please use your chat channel. If these questions, we will be reading those questions. If you have questions to the existing speaker, please go ahead, ask the questions from the chat panel. And if you have like some expectancies for the income for the topics that we're going to discuss, please also set your questions so the speaker can take into account. Our intention is, it's a very heavy agenda and we have only 2 hours. Our intention is to make sure to respond all your questions, so we will handle all of them at the end of the webinar. So Anna, please, the ground is yours. Thank you very much for joining us, and please talk to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Burçin. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for your participation in our webinar. We will start today our presentation with the tax incentives that are currently available. And also we will present part of the tax incentives that will become available, because we also have a new tax incentive that is applicable starting with this year. Regarding the tax incentives that we are quite used to, because they were introduced in our legislation a couple of years ago, I would like to mention first of all the R&D tax incentives, which are in fact two types of incentives. We have the full corporate income tax exemption, which applies for 10 years for companies that are doing only research and development activities. And we also have the 50% extra deduction for eligible expenses, meaning that companies that perform also research and development activities may benefit of 8% tax saving if they apply this tax incentive for research and development activities. Another tax incentive that is quite used in practice, from what we noticed, is the reinvested profit facility. This applies mainly for new equipment that is acquired by a company, and the benefit consists of reducing, basically exempting the profit for the amount of the acquisition cost of this new equipment. There are some conditions that need to be fulfilled, of course, but in practice we noticed that this facility is quite easy to be applied. Of course, if new investments are performed and this new equipment is being acquired. Considering also the COVID period, we noticed that many companies acquired laptops in order to facilitate the work of the employees from home, and also this tax facility can be applied for the acquisition of these laptops. Another tax incentive that is quite old in our legislation is the one related to sponsorship expenses. So basically, if the company plans to do any sponsorships, it can also have a tax advantage by benefiting of a tax credit, reducing the corporate income tax liability. Of course, we also have the tax depreciation, which can be used in different methods. One of the methods that would help the company is the accelerated method, because basically through this method you can deduct 50% of the value of the equipment in the first year, and then to apply the linear depreciation in the coming period. Since these facilities are already existing in our legislation and many companies are already applying them, but still there are some companies that are afraid to do so due to various reasons, or perhaps because the conditions were not fulfilled so far and they will be fulfilled this year. We thought it would be good to have a summary of those in our presentation. And now I would also like to launch a poll question and to kindly ask you to respond to our question, meaning what tax incentives did you utilize so far? And if you would please select one of the facilities that we mentioned here, it would help us to see what exactly you are most interested in. So we put here the research and development incentive, the reinvested profit incentive, the sponsorships, and also the tax amnesty that my colleague Luisa will speak about a bit later. We will give you like a few more seconds in order to be able to respond. Yes, I think we can close the question now, if everybody managed to answer it. I understand that people are still voting, so we will give a few more seconds. Yeah, so we also have the results now. It looks like the research and development incentive, the reinvested profit facility, and the sponsorships were mostly used. 31% voted for these tax incentives, but the tax amnesty appears that also was utilized by 8% of the respondents. So I think it's a good step forward, because having all these tax incentives in our legislation only brings an advantage, and we should basically use every advantage that we have in order to optimize our taxes. Thank you for answering. I think now we can move on to the new tax incentive that is going to be applicable starting this year. So basically for the corporate income tax computation for 2021, or micro enterprise tax or Horeca tax, depending on the type of company, some reductions are applicable, and they vary. The reduction, or the minimum reduction, is 2%, but they can increase up to 15% of the corporate income tax liability due, for example. There are some conditions that need to be fulfilled, and the main one, the basic condition, is for the company to have positive equity, which should be equal to at least 50% of the share capital. If the company doesn't currently have a positive equity, but you still want to apply for this tax incentive, then there may be some solutions for you to reach the positive equity, such as performing a debt to equity swap, which would lead to increasing the share capital. The annual reductions vary, because if the basic condition is fulfilled and then you also have some increases in the share capital from year to year, then this benefit increases. So what we suggest in order to benefit of this facility is to take a look at the company's equity, and to see first of all if it is positive, and then to see how you can improve it, how you can increase the company's equity in order to benefit from this incentive at the maximum level. This was my presentation regarding the current and the new tax incentive. I will now leave the floor to my colleague Luisa, who will speak about the tax amnesty. Thank you.
Luisa, we cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I was muted. So I was saying that, as Burcin and Ana was already anticipating, I will also discuss today about tax facilities, but more from a procedural perspective. And I mean, whenever we already have some main tax obligations to be paid, which we challenge or not, how we strive to annul the ancillary associated to such tax main obligations, and how we try to ease the payment of such main tax obligations. So the first point that I will present today is about, of course, the tax amnesty. In accordance with the theme of our workshop today, is if we can still apply for tax amnesty. And the answer is yes, we can still apply for tax amnesty in order to annul the ancillary of the main tax obligations that are due or due on March 31st, 2020. We can also apply the tax amnesty for the budgetary obligations due to the local authorities, and also to the obligations due to other public authorities. In which conditions? So we have to fulfill three main conditions. We have to settle the main obligations, and by settlement we can understand both payment or compensation or time barrel, or we can also have the prescription and the enforcement procedure. The second condition would be to have all the declarations submitted with the authorities at the moment of submitting for the tax amnesty. And then, of course, about the request itself, the request has to be submitted no later than 31st of January 2022, with one exception, and in a couple of minutes I will revert to that. The exception refers to the main tax obligations that were set through tax assessment decisions, and for such a case there are some special rules, and I will enlarge upon a bit later. So for such main obligations set through the tax assessment decision, there are a few things that we have to take into consideration. First would be that the main tax obligation can be set by the end of a, let's call it classic tax audit, or at the end of a personal check audit, or by the end of a documentary audit, which lately was very used and very familiar to the tax authorities and to the tax inspectors due to the COVID situation, the COVID pandemic situation. Secondly, when we talk to such main obligations, we have to know that the tax audit at the end of which such were set has to be pending by the 31st of March 2021, or it can also start after this date, but no later than 31st of January 2022. And what is important is that the end of such audit is not mandatory to be before the 31st of January. So it's irrespective of such ending. And the third point that must be known about this is that the tax amnesty request itself may be submitted in 90 days time as of the receipt of such tax assessment decision. So in this case, we basically, or the law basically gives us a longer term to submit the tax amnesty request. What we also have to know about the tax amnesty are some particularities which might be of importance. First of all, we can always challenge the tax assessment decision through which we have set the main tax obligations. Then we can apply for the tax amnesty together or in parallel with the scheduled payment, more exactly with the classic scheduled payment, when we have to also submit guarantees and to present such guarantees to the tax authorities. But what we cannot do is to apply in parallel for the tax amnesty and for the simplified scheduled payment. And I will revert, if the time will allow us, I will revert later to this point. Also, you have to know that the effects of the tax amnesty, once gained, they will last in time, even if by the end of the tax audit, the tax assessment decision is challenged and a recheck is set by the settlement body. By the end of, as you know, by the end of the recheck, new tax deeds will be issued, and in, of course, the worst case, tax obligations will be set. However, if we already have gained the tax amnesty, no accessories will be issued for the new tax deeds and the tax obligations that are set through it. And another point about the tax amnesty is that if at 31st of January 2022, you will have a VAT return request pending with the tax authority, and if after such date you will receive a negative answer to such request, there still is the possibility for you to apply for the tax amnesty if in 30 days time as of the receipt of the negative answer, you will pay the main tax obligation. So you will fulfill the first condition for tax amnesty. Of course, all the other conditions must be also fulfilled. And now I will switch to the second topic very briefly. Yes, there. The procedure for simplified payment scheduling. 2 weeks ago, or so no more than 2 weeks ago, a new procedure entered into force. Is the procedure which allows us to apply for simplified payment scheduling. And this procedure has as purpose firstly to decrease the bureaucracy for the taxpayers in order to benefit from the payment of the main tax obligations in installments. And then it also has a second effect, so that would be to increase the voluntary compliance for the taxpayers, both from a declaring and a payment purpose. So it also have a benefit. It is also beneficial for the state. What brings this procedure is basically a few simple steps for the taxpayer in order to apply. So the taxpayer who has temporary financial difficulties has to submit a simple request with the tax authorities, which is not followed by any other documents, except in one case where you would like to pay in installments, but the value of the installments is not equal. So then you will also have to submit the payment schedule with the number of the installments and with the value of such installments. So this being said, this new procedure allows us to have 12 installments, so to pay the main obligation in 12 months. No guarantees have to be submitted with the state in order to obtain the payment in installments. So this would be a novelty and a benefit, whereas the classic procedure where guarantees had to be presented. And also there are shorter deadlines for answering such a request. So the tax authorities have a 5 days term to give you the answer. Of course, we'll see in practice how much time will actually take, but the other procedure, the classic one, presented at 60 days deadline. So this would be again a benefit for the taxpayer. This being said, I remain available for any questions on the two topics, and now I will pass the microphone to Paul, my colleague, to let you know about EU funds and state aid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luisa. In what follows, we will do a very brief status update on the EU funds which will be available shortly for Romania. Now, as you may know, we are in a unique position derived from the COVID situation in that for this time, we will have a doubling of the funds made available to Romania in the following period. The classic structural funds which have been available in the past in the multi-annual financial framework, to which is added another 29 billion euro through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Both of these are in various stages of being finalized, whereas the operational programs are expected to be submitted in their final draft to the Commission later this year, hopefully by the end of this year. And we can expect an approval sometime in spring, followed by the start of the financing timeline in the second or third trimester of next year. The National Recovery and Resilience Plan has already been approved by the Commission and also by the Council. And we are also expecting the development of the relevant applicant guides for a submission at roughly the same second or third quarter. Moving on, for a very, next slide, please. For a very brief look at the operational programs, we have a total budget of 32 billion euro, which covers 5 priority objectives and will have applicability both at national level for projects, as well as more targeted approaches, both at regional level and in some cases at county level. So projects that will only be possible to be submitted in certain specified counties. Funding is, as always, available both for the public sector and the private sector. And to the private sector, mostly for SMEs, with some funds available for large enterprises, especially in what concerns research and development and innovation, energy efficiency, the development of clean energy, and sustainable industrial products and processes. Moving on, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, which is meant to complement the operational program. So they will be working in parallel and covering each other in supporting those areas which are in need of reforms and investments. The NRRP is focused on delivering a set number of reforms in key aspects of Romanian society, let's say, with a set of 97 underlying investments which are directly linked to these reforms. The funds available here are mostly for the public sector, for the public administration, to support those reforms and investments in crucial areas, including infrastructure, energy efficiency, and administrative reform. But some aspects are also available to companies, including large enterprises, in such topics as advanced digitalization, which means robotics, AI, blockchain technology, so not the usual digitalization we're used to. Other topics such as research and development, strategic investments in microelectronics, so semiconductors and low power processors, and the production of green energy, as well as a very, let's say, interesting direction for investments for the entire production chain related to battery and storage capacity productions, as well as photovoltaic panels. Now I'd like to move on a bit to a subject which may be possibly more familiar, at least to some of you, which is the two state aid schemes which are available at this moment, the state aid scheme for investments and the state aid scheme for salary costs. These are two state aids run by the Romanian government, and the one based on government decision 807 covers investments, large investments of at least 0.91 million euro in equipment, machinery, and constructions related to a initial investment. This is a very important classification, meaning that the investment can be either a completely new one, a new unit in a completely separate area, independent from anything you may be running already, or the extension of an existing production unit through the production of increased volumes. Diversification of your current production in introducing new product lines or completely new products from what you've been developing so far, or fundamental changes to your current production process, approaching it from an entirely different area. Most eligible activity sectors, most sectors are eligible, with some key exceptions related both to production of alcohol, munitions, financial services, realty, telecom. One very important note here is that one field is no longer excluded from the financing as it was in the past, and that is the field of constructions. So everything related to the constructions activity sector is now eligible to receive financing. The state aid intensity is of up to 50% in certain regions of the country. As you may know, some regions like Bucharest received very reduced financing, whereas most of the others would receive up to 50%. Starting January of next year, we will see a reduction in aid intensities in certain regions. Bucharest will be excluded entirely. Western region and Ilfov will drop from 35% to 30%, and Northwest and Center will drop from 50% to 40%. The maximum financing remains at 37.5 million, which is corresponding to a total investment of at least 100 million euro. And the amount of aid which can be received is dependent upon the amount of taxes estimated to be paid back to the state budget within 5 to 7 years. These taxes include employee salary contributions and income tax, company profit tax, and property taxes. Eligible costs, like I said, include both construction works and procurement of equipment and intangible assets. All of these need to be new. It is a very important aspect. And in case the investment includes a large amount of intangible assets, these must not be more than 49% of the total value of the project. One other aspect I want to go in here real quick is that relocations from another country within the European Economic Area is strictly prohibited. So no closing of a factory elsewhere in the EU and moving it in Romania with a similar activity. That would automatically disqualify the project. Moving on to the other similar state aid scheme, the one for salaries, on the next slide. Like I said, it is very similar, and most of the points from the previous slide apply. The same rule for initial investments apply, but in here we do not have a minimum value of the investment. However, we have a more important condition that the investment needs to create at least 100 new jobs. The same eligible sectors apply, with the difference that construction is not supported here. And the investment to be carried out, although not having a set limit, needs to involve fixed assets. So in principle, your investment could be reduced to a laptop per person, let's say. The intensity is in the same rates as for the previous state aid scheme, with the same amount of maximum aid to be received. But another key condition here is that the aid amount cannot exceed half of what is to be expected to be generated in taxes. And this state aid scheme, whereas the other one finances assets, the acquisition of assets, this one finances salary costs, total salary costs for these new jobs to be created. Like I said, a minimum of 100 new jobs for a period of up to 24 months. So it's something you might want to consider if you plan on creating a lot of new jobs. Now I will give the floor to my colleague Ionuț, who will be addressing the subject of transfer pricing during COVID.
Hi. And so transfer pricing has been in the past few years a kind of hot topic during tax audits in Romania, as this constituted an easy source of income for the state budget. And how a typical transfer pricing analysis would go, they will compare the profitability of a company against an arm's length range computed based on the profitability of similar independent companies that carry out somewhat similar activities. This approach would assume that a company which is part of a group would consistently register profits similar to those within the market. Well, this somehow needed to change as of the impact of COVID, when most of companies and industries started registering some losses. And this was also corroborated with the fact that the information based on which the transfer pricing analysis were prepared, those related to the profitabilities of similar companies needed in order to determine the arm's length range, aren't up to date. There are usually 1 or 2 years behind. So there are no data that can help determine how a company, an independent company, would act during the same circumstances, during the same period of time, without letting the time pass. And this comes especially difficult for large taxpayers that have the obligation of annually preparing the TP file. So in this regard, the OECD issued last year a report in which they offered some additional guidelines on how the transfer pricing analysis should be performed in order to take into account the COVID impact. And they are, although they are pretty general, they offer some pretty general guidelines which can help taxpayer in justifying the losses registered. So the first aspect that should be taken into account is the split of function and risks between companies part of the group. The previous slide, please. Not, yeah, thanks. And also the intercompany transactions should be properly detailed and analyzed separately in order to identify where losses come from and to identify if such losses come from intercompany transactions or are due to circumstances of the industry or of the market. And afterwards, there is also the possibility of reassessing the comparable companies which were used for the previous transfer pricing documentations, because as such analysis went right now, if an analysis was prepared for a previous year, it would serve as a basis for analysis for future years. And we were somehow tied in the selection of comparables and incentivized to keep them in order to have to be consequent. And this also can be changed. So moving on to the next slide. As I was saying, the issue of documenting the transfer pricing comes also for large taxpayers, which have the obligation of annually documenting the transfer prices carried. And although this wasn't initially on the agenda because the list of taxpayers has changed after we prepared the agenda, also we need to take into account that this starting January 2022, the list of Romanian large taxpayers has been changed, and for some of you, there are additional transfer pricing requirements, those specific to large taxpayer, and as such, annual transfer pricing documentations have to be prepared in order to justify the arm's length compliance. Of course, there are some thresholds that need to be fulfilled. Those are between 200,000 and 350,000 euros. And there is also a deadline for the preparation of the transfer pricing documentation for those who have become large taxpayer. This is by the time of the submission of the corporate income tax, but it needs to be taken into account that the TP documentation does not have to be submitted, only prepared by that time. Starting the deadline for submission of the cheat return, the tax authorities can request to large taxpayers the TP file either on the spot or by providing a deadline of maximum 10 days, which can be extremely difficult to fulfill if the documentation hasn't been prepared so far. In case of failure to comply with this obligation, there is of course a fine, which is around 4,000 euros maximum. It's not that high, but the main risk is that the tax authorities will be entitled to perform their own estimation of the transfer pricing, and adjust the taxable income of the company as they consider necessary. And this will result in significant payments needed to be made. So the topic is basically around those two aspects. On one hand, there are still some losses registered as per the impact of COVID, which will result in lower non-compliance with the arm's length range computed based on companies for which we have financial data available for a period in which we did not have COVID. So compared with more profitable companies. And on the other hand, we have to comply with a shorter deadline for the preparation of the TP file. And next up, I will let my colleague talk to you about the working and living in Romania and the immigration challenges.
Thank you, Ionuț.
Mihaela, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad I have the opportunity to discuss with you again. I'm sorry we are doing it in this context, but at least we are trying to get the best out of what we can do. Regarding immigration, so it was a hot topic during the COVID period, and it still is, due to all the, first of all, due to all travel restrictions that were imposed by the authorities from all around the world, which in a way or another either affected us at a personal level or in terms of a business perspective when we weren't able to bring the people that we need most in Romania. I tried here on my slides to put in view like the, let's say, the current challenges from what we experienced in the last year and a half. First of all, we have, let's say, the law stuff, the law part, which didn't change at all, meaning we have the same conditions to enter Romania, the same condition to work in Romania. And what changed is the practicality part, meaning that due to the COVID, we have we can say that we have a whole different process. In terms of traveling to Romania, just the main highlights. So you can enter Romania on a Romanian business visa. If you don't have one, you have to apply for it at the Romanian consulate in Turkey. And you can benefit of the same rights if you have either a Schengen visa with multiple entries, or if you have a Turkish green passport, which is a special type of passport given just to some specific categories of people as per Turkish law. Based on a short-term visa, you can stay in Romania up to 90 days in any 6 months period. And the most important aspect that should be clarified here is that you are not allowed to work under a business visa. When we are talking about working in Romania, as you may well know, we have that lengthy process, which takes around 4 to 6 months, because for most of the cases, when you want to be hired in Romania, you need a work permit and a long-term visa. What's also specific to the Turkish nationals is that in case you are already holding a residency permit for working purpose as a local employee for more than 4 years in a row, starting with the 5th year, you are exempt from a work permit, meaning it is much easier to either change the job position or change the employer. In what concern, let's say what happened during the COVID, just to give you like a brief with what we experienced, it's the, let's say, the delays we are facing now from the authority side, especially for the work permit applications and the residency permit applications. The reasons of delay is, first of all, the high number of applications. So for year 2021, we had initially a work permit quota set for 25,000 new work permits, which at the middle, in summer, it was doubled in order to have to reach 50,000 by the end of the year. So this means that the authorities are having, let's say, almost a double number of work that they have to do compared with last year with the same personnel, or even low, because from the discussions we are having, we understand that a lot of people are going. So we can say that what took forever, like around 4 months to come to Romania, now it can add a delay or even 2 to 3 months, because from the moment you submit an online application in order to get an appointment, you need sometimes to wait around 6 weeks to have a feedback, which is crazy, I would say. Another challenge we are now having is also caused by the fact that the immigration authorities are hiring new people, which, let's say, they didn't have the chance or the time, to be more precise, to learn all the particularities or the right process. And at the moment they are reviewing the applications, they are making some beginners mistakes, but which in the end costs again more time. We are facing, let's say, when they don't see all the documents we uploaded and they reject the application saying that we didn't upload some documents, or there is a more particular case and they have no idea and again they reject saying that the file is not complete. The only issue here is that once you resubmit the same application, uploading the additional documents, you're losing the, let's say, the spot you had in terms of reviewing the file. So you'll go once again down the line. And what you have to do here, unfortunately, all the time it implies more time, meaning you have to go there and call and discuss and tell them that it was a mistake and explain. Regarding another thing very specific now is that during the period in which in Romania it is declared state of alert, we have a special derogatory law which says that all the documents that are issued by the Romanian authorities remain valid for 90 days after the expiration days. What does this mean in practice from an immigration perspective? Well, on short, is that now you can submit the application for extending your right to stay, even if your document already expired. Of course, assuming that all the other conditions are still fulfilled. I believe that this gives to the authorities, the immigration office, a little bit more time in setting up the appointments, because they are no longer obliged to set all the applications by the moment the document expired, how it was until this current derogatory was active. So the only downside of this part with having a document, a residency permit expired, is when you intend to travel abroad. Because even though this condition, this provision is well known by the Romanian border authorities, or should be, or at least it's easy to prove them, when you're coming to Romania from your, let's say, home country or from a different country, when they are seeing the residency permit expired, and they will say that you are no longer allowed to travel to Romania because most probably they will not let you in. So this is the challenge that we are currently facing, and the only recommendation that we can do is for you to either try to, of course, to submit the residency permit application as early as you can, and if somehow you are in a situation in which you already past the deadline, what you can do is to try to discuss with the authority if is there a possibility to provide like a travel certificate which can confirm that your right to stay was extended, because unfortunately they are not issuing any other official document mentioning this 90 days extension that can be used abroad. Moving forward to the ongoing initiatives, I believe we can also change for the next slide. Thank you. We have two main aspects of interest for this year. First of all, we have the work permit quota, which for 2022, we have a record number of 100,000 new workers. This means that the immigration authorities can issue 100,000 new work permits, which is crazy. In practice, we have no idea how it happened. The person we spoke with said that they don't have in plan hiring new persons, so we are not sure if they will be able to manage all the cases in order that at the end of 2022 to see indeed this high number of work permits approved. Of course, you can imagine that this number was also set with the huge demands from the market side, considering that also with the National Plan for the Recovery and Resilience, a lot of projects and investments should be made, for which, of course, workforce is needed. So yeah, This is for the moment, the work permit quota is just a law draft, but we expect to be approved by the end of the year in order to be in force starting with 1st of January. Another new initiative, which is also very COVID related, to put it like this, it's called a digital nomad visa, which was once again, it's a draft law. It was not approved, but it has a very nice and very, let's say, actual context, meaning that it is applicable to those being able to work remotely, and that can also come and do this in Romania by having a specific type of visa for that. This way, they can also present that their only purpose for traveling to Romania is just to visit the country. There are a few conditions, like the main condition that should be proved in order to qualify for it. And first of all, that you need to prove that you're either hired abroad or own a company abroad, and that you can perform your activity remotely, meaning like from a laptop. This is the meaning. And also you need to prove that you have sufficient money to sustain yourself while you're staying in Romania. And it was set at to prove that you have 3 times the Romanian average salary per month, and that you do not have any tax debts or criminal record. And another thing that is important here, that the initial document, the residency permit, is issued for 6 months, and if you intend to stay more after the 6 months, you can stay. You can obtain a document valid for 1 year, and of course apply how many times you need it. We believe that the digital nomad will not be approved very soon. We are not sure if this is a priority for the authorities, but we will just have to wait and see what will happen in the future on this. The last aspect that I wanted to present to you is for those of you who are interested to, let's say, to move to Romania, or who are already in Romania for more than, let's say, 4 years, 3-4 years, and are intending to stay. And I believe it is important to understand what are the options available in case you're planning to stay on a long term in Romania. And we have 2 main options. First of all, it's either the long term or permanent stay. It means the same thing, even it has 2 different terms. And it's applicable to those who, or it's available for those who already have a continuous stay of at least 5 years in Romania and intend to stay more. There are a few conditions, and I would say that the hardest to be met are 2. First of all, not to stay outside Romania either 6 consecutive months in this 5 years period or 10 months in total, and also to be able to talk Romanian language. Assuming that these conditions are fulfilled, then you will be approved a permanent stay, which is a document. First of all, it is issued for at least 5 years. So this will help you with the renewal process. It will no longer be on a yearly base or annual base, or you are becoming exempt from obtaining a work permit, meaning you are more flexible in approaching the Romanian market. In what concerns the citizenship, first of all, you need to have the permanent stay because it's the equivalent of the Romanian domicile, and this is a prior and mandatory step for obtaining the citizenship. And of course, it's applicable if you either stay 8 years at least in Romania, or 5 if you are married with a Romanian national. And also here you have a Romanian language test, which is, again, it's much more accurate than the one on the permanent stay, because you also have a written exercise and also a lot of questions from history, geography, and constitution. But the good part for this is that you already have the questions, so you can learn them and be prepared for the exam. The downside with the citizenship is that it's a very, very lengthy process. I did say 1 to 2 years, but from what we are seeing in the last year, the authorities are processing very, very slow the citizenship applications. And of course, COVID, it's all the time highlighted as a reason of delay, and it's not something we can challenge. One more thing that I just find important to mention is that both on a permanent or a citizen stay, you have some exemptions from the standard process, and usually it is applicable if you can prove that at a personal level, of course, through the companies that you own, you have made exemptions, investments of more than €1 million. So that was all I wanted to present you from an immigration perspective. I would just like to remind you that in case you have any questions, either immigration or in any other topics discussed by my colleagues, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure to answer at the end. And now, moving forward, I'm giving the floor to my colleague Monica, who will present you the workforce challenges.
Thank you, Mihaela. But before starting my presentation, I would like to invite Guven because I know he has some comments on the transferability of foreign workers between companies. So Guven, if you want to.
Yeah. So you can hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the valuable information that you have presented, Mihaela. I have a question-like comment actually regarding the this transferability issue of the foreign workers. As you know very well, even better than me, there is a huge amount of work and expenditures for any foreign workers to bring, to get the permissions, to bring them. Sometimes you pay in advance some wage, similar things just to keep the person in, how to say, on hold and stuff like that. So after spending so much effort and bringing the person in the country, you start to work, and after a while, which happens in many cases after a short time of period of time, the worker is getting in touch with the markets and starting to have his own network, let's say, and receive some offers from some other companies. It's not necessarily from the same sector. It's totally different. You bring a waiter for the restaurant, and they are receiving some offers, higher, of course, offers for gardening. And they are leaving your company after 3 months and going to that company for, I don't know, doesn't matter, for 50 euros plus. And you remain with all the efforts, all the time spent and wasted. So I believe there should be a kind of limitation to that. And we should start to have some incentives, initiatives actually, in that sense. Before it used to be, if I'm not mistaken, the worker has the right to go to another company. The company has to start over all the procedures, but the crucial point there, which makes the worker think 10 times, was the obligation that he has to go back to original country to get the new visa and to come back to Romania after that. Now, as far as I understood, it's totally changed. And while the worker is working in my company, by the way, which is not the case for the timing I don't have, but I'm in the process of bringing some foreign workers. While the worker is working in my company, he can sign a contract with another company, let's say unofficial contract or just a gentleman agreement, and that company is starting while he is here all the procedures, and in, let's say, in 2 months they get the maximum 2 months, they get the work permit in that company, and he can switch without any other obligation to that company, and repeating that I remain with the time and the money wasted for that person or for those people that I brought. So I think we should start, I don't know, some talks with the authorities about this, and we have to find a solution to this. Is there any considerations in your work for this issue, or do you have any idea how we can solve this. This was the main question and comment.
Yeah,
Thank you very
indeed. So you are, yeah, thank you. So indeed, you are right. It is very easy once you have an employee working here to obtain a work permit for him and bring him to his company, to your company, as the process is much simplified. And unfortunately, due to the fact that once you hire them, the employers benefits of the same rights from a labor law perspective with your other employees, it means that you need to take care when you're discussing about putting them some conditions that you do not want them to face any discrimination. So we understand that from an immigration law perspective and from a time and cost perspective, this is very, well, let's say it's very challenging and very expensive. But what it has to be done, it may be, I'm not sure exactly at what extent the authorities are willing to discuss. Maybe if indeed this will become a practice much more aggressive in the market, and all the, let's say that the market will have the power to discuss with the authorities. What I know that until now, they are not open for dialogue. I mean, all the times we have tried as like big corporation to discuss with them and to see if there are any ways we can efficientize the process, we can do something. They were not willing to listen to us. It's very easy to say they do not care. So yeah, maybe like you said, like an option would be that if you're changing your employer to go in the home country and apply for a new visa, then yes, this will be, but what are you doing with the others that are, I mean, they are not doing this, are not changing the employer after 3 months in Romania, but there are some good and honest employers that after 3 years, 4 years, or maybe 1 year, they want to go and change the employer because something was not right at their level. So there are many sensitive aspects that should be considered when discussing such a big change, because it is, if you're considering the process now, it is a big change. And not sure at what extent you can force the people not to leave. I'm not, I mean, this is just at a first glance.
May I? Sorry, it used to be like 3 years before. After 3 years, the person in case had the freedom to change the employer. Now there is no time limits. So from my point of view as an employer, if I'm spending so much money and time, minimum 2-3 years, that person should be not, how to say, not obliged to work in my company. Whenever he wants, he can go back to his country. You cannot oblige anyone to work for and work for you. But the thing is that if he wants to remain in Romania, where I brought him on my expenditure, on my time, and on my business plan, he has to respect also this condition. If he wants to change the employer, or if he is not happy with the conditions that I'm providing, by the way, almost all the companies that are bringing the foreign workers, they are in a positive sense discriminated from the Romanian ones. They are provided with the accommodation, they are provided with the food and stuff like that, where the Romanian people are, maybe they are suffering more regarding this, how to say, conditions. I'm not talking about the exceptions. Maybe there are exceptions who are, how to say, stupidly trying to exploit this situation, but we are talking about the normal conditions, not the exceptions. So there should be a time limit. After that time limit, the employee is free to choose between my company or another employer. But this time period should be minimum of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah,
this
I
could
believe it's a very important aspect. And what it can be done, it's only to try to discuss as a big, as a big group, to discuss with the authorities and see what is their standpoint on this, considering that they are now considerably increasing the quota, and also that they are also having some numbers and can see that also the number of work permits as change of employer increased significantly, and maybe they will be willing and open to discuss these aspects in order to also understand the costs at the employer's level when they are being.
We started as TIAD for an initiative in that respect to the authorities, the immigration office actually. And my kind request would be, if it's reasonable to you as well and the other companies, to support this initiative with the arguments. But I do not think that we have clear information about how many workers came to a company and transferred to another. I don't think that we do have a clear information, but I know that the companies are complaining much about this issue. So I'm done. Sorry, I intervened too much. Thank you very much.
Thank you also. We'll keep in mind that. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on from this this discussion, I would like to discuss with you about some workforce challenges, and it's pretty strange because usually I'm the last one speaking. I'm not the last one speaking today, but generally I'm the one standing between participants and lunch. I'm not sure if it's not worse now because I'm sitting between you and Safte, which I know is the most important topic of this session, probably, judging also by the questions we are receiving. So I will try to keep this very short, and I will ask you if you want to know more details about it, just contact me. You have the contact details on the slide. Yeah. So what we wanted to show on this slide is actually that we are facing now, I think, worldwide, I wouldn't limit to Romania on this, with a huge problem that comes from the perception that the employees have on the new ways of working, the reality of the situations, and the solutions that we have. So, for example, the perception of the employees when they read through social medias or articles that they see in the media, they just have a look and say, okay, working from everywhere is like working from everywhere. I can leave one day to another foreign country and start performing activities from there. I do not need to notify my employer. I just do that and that's it. They are not aware that this type of thinking and acting actually brings a lot of risks, not only to the employer, but also to the employees, so to themselves when they take such a decision. And we see these hashtags everywhere. We have expectations. Individuals have the need to be more flexible, to work on a flexible working arrangement and so on. But again, they need to know what the implications are when they do so. And it's very important for the employers, in our opinion, to communicate with the employees and to educate them in this respect. For example, holding some workshops to explain to them why they need to notify the employer when they decide to work from another country. We have the immigration topic that Mihaela reached before. We have the tax topic that relates to a potential decrease in net income at the level of the individual if some conditions are met, so they can be harmed themselves. They can receive a lower net income if taxes will be due in a country where the tax rate is higher. We have also risk at the level of the company, the permanent establishment risk, leading to potential compliance obligations in various countries where our employees decide to perform their activities and so on. Various risks that are hidden between the expectations and the perception that everybody has that we can work from everywhere. Yeah? We also mentioned on the slide that compromise is important, yeah, because as employer, we need to be careful at what the employees want, but we also need to know about the risks and reach a compromise. Look at the costs, at the risk that at the costs that are that come with the risk that we are taking, and take a conscious decision or where to stop and put the proper limits to working from everywhere. Yeah. If we can move on to the next slide, please. I just listed some few rising concepts in the workforce on the workforce market. The first question actually is, how independent are we? Because in the last 18 months, in the pandemic starting, I think all of us have experienced this from our employees. Yeah, we feel more independent. We feel that we can work from home. We feel that we can we do not longer need to work from, I don't know, 9 to 6. Yeah, we can have different schedules that match also our personal lives. We feel that we can do something more. We feel that we can be doing additional, I don't know, work for other companies maybe. We feel various employees have also started their own business they are working on. So we generally have this feeling that we are more independent than we were before the pandemics. Yeah. And this raises a question that was there since forever, the question of independent versus dependent. Dependent is the employee. Employment in Romania is taxed with some 43%. Freelancers in Romania, independent activities are taxed much lower. And this taxation gap always was on the radar of the authorities. This is a topic that is highly scrutinized during tax audits, but it was also of interest for Romanian companies, because if proven that they can actually pull out some employees they currently have, for example, and work with them as independent, changing the nature of the activity. So it's not only like changing the contract. I'm no longer having an employment contract. I have a contract for provision of services. This brings a benefit for the company due to lower taxes. This also raises the retention, the attraction on the market, because we can give a higher pay to individuals and so on. It is very important, if you are considering this, or if this topic of freelancing instead of employment is raised during the interviews you have with individuals, to make sure that you look at the conditions from a tax perspective and from a labor law perspective. So there are two different views. Yeah, you have to make sure that the activity the individual will be performing for you will be truly independent from a labor law and from a tax perspective. From a tax perspective, the things are pretty clear, because the independent activity is actually defined by 7 criteria, and if one fulfills 4, that is an independent activity and you can move forward with an independent contract. Yeah, if not, you should rather have a look and maybe conclude an employment contract, or change the way you are reporting to the relationship you have with that individual. Separately from the independent activities, I listed here on the slide some different views on work that we see happening more and more in practice, and I will not stop on them because I think we are already in delay, and again I'm standing between you and Safti. We experience individuals, employees, but also employers as companies being more and more interested to having frequent salary updates rather than having one bigger increase on a yearly basis, for example. Various companies are interested in salary payment in cryptocurrency. And what we see is actually a monthly variable pay. Everybody is interested in having a monthly variable pay based on the contribution the employee has in the respective month to the business, depending on several variables: type of work performed, if it was something more like admin matters they handled, or business development, versus actually performing activities that bring income to the company, and so on. If we can move forward to the next slide, please. I wanted to also draw your attention on some of the hashtags we see on social media, and employees are raising more and more in the discussion. We have workation and pleasure. These two actually refer to periods of time that combine work with pleasure or vacation, and they bear several risks. Yeah, because if we were to travel, for example, in a non-EU country for vacation purposes, let's say, but we also decide to work there, I don't know, for a couple of, let's say, for a week, 3 days before, 4 days after the vacation, just to extend the stay, we already have a week of working there, and this might bring some liabilities. Yeah, we might have labor law liabilities. We have again cybersecurity, which is again very important for employers. We have health and safety. For example, if you have an accident whilst working there, the things are very different versus if you are on a vacation when you have the accident. So we also have liabilities to notify the authorities from that respective country that, if not fulfilled, might draw penalties, fines for the individual and for the employer, and so on. So it's very important to have your employees report this workation and pleasure also. The difference between workation and pleasure is that The first one, workation, is focused on vacation and it's extended with a few days of work. Bleisure, it's actually a business trip of 3-4 days, which is extended for another 2 or 3 days for pleasure. The silent hours is actually something that it's also very, let's say, trending now. It's about not sending emails after a certain times, not being able to access your email account, like putting the lights off in the office, starting with a certain hour and so on, and make sure that your employees have their time off as they should. Office residents, it's another trend. It's about those individuals that even if we are working on a hybrid way of working, you know, both in the office and at home, these are those individuals that actually are in the office on a constant basis. And for them, you might want to add some perks because they are coming to the office if your interest is to bring more in the office and less stay at home. What is important with all these trends, and we all have only listed here 3, but I think we can talk for hours. It's the fact that you need to combine them very well. It's very important to see if they are consistent. All these flex working patterns are consistent with one another, and what is the most appropriate for your company. On my last slide, I had some comments regarding the social security contributions and the social security benefits that one might access. If we can move to the next slide, but due to the time constraint, I think I will pass this because I know that this topic was also covered in previous session by my colleagues. If you have any questions, as I said in the beginning, please feel free to reach me by phone, by email at any time, and we can discuss any of these topics. So without no further ado, I'm leaving the floor to Victoria to cover the SAFT topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Hello to all today. I'm happy to be here. I hope that today I will be able to answer to all your questions. If not, please feel free to contact me. You have my contact details on the slide. Please, can we move to the next slide? So SAFT, what SAFT represents? Actually, SAFT represents a reporting requirement for taxpayers, and it reflects an international standard for electronic exchange of data between taxpayers and tax authorities. Its main role is actually to simplify the work of the tax authorities in order for them to be able to check easily the standardized data that the taxpayers are submitting. This was first published in 2005, and during time had a lot of updates. But starting with 2010, various jurisdictions taking it very seriously and decided to implement it in different forms, from modular ones, mandatory on demand, or optional. Moving to the next slide. I will tell you that the plans for Romania with respect to SAFT are that starting with January 2022, the companies in Romania will have to perform such a report. This was a plan assumed through the PNRR document as a step for the digitalization of tax audits, and in order to try to decrease the VAT gap that in Romania it's quite high. Actually, our country is situated at the end of the list between the member states with respect to this topic. Also, the tax authorities announced that this reporting will be actually an instrument for increasing tax collection at the level of ANAF, and by 2025 they expect to increase the tax collection through this plan, combined with other instruments that they will use, up to 5%. how will taxpayers report such data? They will have to extract the data from their ERP systems and transform it based on the standardized request by the tax authorities into an XML file, transfer the XML file through the DUC integrator of the tax authorities in order to see whether or not the document has errors, then attach it to the statement D406, the SAFTI statements the Romanian tax authorities created for this reporting, and submitted it to the tax authorities. What are the timelines? If we can move to the next slide. These are the deadlines imposed by the authorities. So the first pioneers in 2022 will be the large taxpayers that are split into categories. The large taxpayers that were on the list during 2022-21 and remained as such during the modifications that were created at the beginning of November will start the reporting period with 1st of January and will have the first submission deadline at the end of February. While the large taxpayers that were not considered large taxpayers during 2021 and were recently added on the list as new taxpayers, this topic was also discussed by Ionuț, my colleague earlier, will have the reporting obligations, will start the reporting obligations with 1st of July, and the first submission deadline will be end of August 2022. However, taking into consideration the large data required by the tax authorities, they were nice enough to grant us a 6-month period of grace, meaning that if companies, taxpayers are not ready and have not implemented this solution for reporting by the first submission deadlines imposed by the tax authorities, they have this 6-month period of grace. Meaning that the safest submission and the latest for the old taxpayers would be end of July for the entire package, January-June 2022, and for the new large taxpayers, they can the latest submit the package July-December 2022 at the end of January 2023. This means that if you respect this 6 months period of grace, you won't receive fines, and the tax risk of your company would not be affected. After these deadlines, the fines will apply, and this missing information would be taken into consideration by the tax authorities when computing the tax risk of the taxpayers. Medium-sized taxpayers will have the first submission deadline in February 2023 for January, and until present time, no grace period was announced, and frankly, we do not see any discussions in this area, and I personally don't think that it will be announced such a grace period like for the large taxpayers, taking into consideration that they know the legislation is in force and they have like a year to be prepared to perform the reporting. So the SAFTI file, it's intended to constitute the foundation for determining the fiscal situation of companies, and moving forward, you will see that it's quite important to be well prepared before performing such a reporting. Romania intends to implement the full package issued by OECD. This is something that only Norway did in these 10 years, 15 years of SAFTI implementation, and all 5 modules will be mandatory. They decided to split it in three reporting periods, so in a regularity of monthly or quarterly reporting, depending on the type of the taxpayer, the large taxpayer. If it's submitting its VAT statement on a monthly basis, then the SAFTI will also be submitted on a monthly basis. If such submission for VAT purposes is performed on a quarterly basis, then the SAFTI submission will also be performed on a quarterly basis. There will be reported information like GL entries, accounts payables, and accounts receivable. Once a year, at the same time with the deadline applicable for financial statements, companies will have the obligation to submit the module connected to the fixed assets. While upon demand, but not more than 30 days from the date of the request, the information regarding inventory should be also reported to the tax authorities. So tax authorities will come, will say, please submit your D406 statement with respect to inventory, and you have 30 days to prepare it and submit it. This is similar with the TP file requirement for large taxpayers. As far as I remember, for the TP file, it's a shorter period in order to present the file. Moving forward and entering in more details, this is how the SAFTI schema looks. It has around 250 mandatory elements, so this is quite huge information that companies should report to the tax authorities, and it's split in 4 main sections. The first one is the header of the statement, where we have general information regarding the software used, the identification data of the taxpayers, and the sections that are reporting in the respective statement. This is because the tax authorities accept only statements up to 500 megabytes. So if your data exceed this threshold, then you have to submit multiple statements, and this header will have ticked the boxes which with the sections that you submit in that respective statement. We have the master file. In the master file, there are required general information like simplified trial balance your GL account with opening on debit and credit and closing debit credit, customers and suppliers details from ID to contacts to opening and closing for each period. A tax table, information about the products, quantities, or and check codes in case we are discussing of products that we are using for import, export, intra-community supply, or intra-community acquisitions. We have the general ledger entries, that this is so we are moving from a general information to a more and more in-depth information. For the general ledger entry, we have to report it entry by entry, and for each entry we have to give a unique ID number and a short description, reference to documents, amounts in RON or and foreign currency, the ID of the partners, and if we have transactions with the individuals, their personal identification number. And in the section, the source documents. We have to submit the invoices, all invoices, acquisitions and sales at line level, containing all the elements included in those lines. If we are talking about goods, quantity, price per quantity, total, the taxable base, the VAT separately. If we are talking about services, detailed the possible details for services. And moving forward, the payments that can be connected with the invoices we paid. Taxpayers should submit payments, the payments that they are performing, the payments that they are receiving, and some payments that are performed to their employees in order to perform their day-to-day work activities. So, for example, if you have an employee that has to go on a trip and you pay him the expense for this trip, you have to report this in the SAFTI file. This in the source document umbrella, we have to report also information regarding the fixed assets and the movement of goods. For fixed assets, we have to report data such as the acquisition date, the costs, the book value or the depreciation value of the assets. While for the movement of goods, we have to report data starting from the warehouse where the good is stored, the tariff classification code used for that good, the price, the quantity, the value, the ownership over the good in case we are talking about goods that we are storing it for a contract of tooling or for a contract of call of stock. We also have to report this. So taking into consideration the magnitude of the information to be reported, several tax risks may apply. Moving forward to the next slide, during our exercises in helping our clients in with this SAFTI implementation, we identified a large palette of such risks, from corporate income tax and value-added tax deductibility issues to stock and inventory problems, taking into consideration that also the tax authorities require from an inventory perspective to report a missing good, an expired good, a granted free of charge good, or an inventory loss. So based on our experience, I was thinking that today it might be of help if I give you some situations that we've encountered and some recommendations for you what to check and how to analyze this data. So before please go back to the previous slide. Thank you. So before entering into the SAFTI reporting, our recommendation for you would be to revise your invoice structure. We saw in our workshops that clients don't have, for example, the discounts put it on a separate line on the invoice. So this is something that should be reviewed and should be checked whether your specifics, your business specifics, are reflected on your invoices. You have to recheck your tariff classification performed, because this is something that is, if it is performed wrongfully, it can have a huge impact on VAT and customs taxes. and it will be openly seen by the tax inspectors now, by the tax authorities, now that you have to report it into the SAFTI file. You should have a closer look to your inventory, missing goods and offsets procedure, because also taking into consideration that the tax authorities require a detailed reportation about these situations. You will have like a radiography of your business in front of the tax authorities. And last but not least, should ensure that the ownership of the goods in a call of stock or in a tooling agreement should be correctly and precisely mapped during the SAFTI reporting. This is because it also has consequences on your cash flow on VAT. Moving forward, how can we approach this? Reportation, and how can we manage in such a short time to face the requests of the tax authorities? So we thought of a four-step plan that we think that it might be of help for taxpayers. First of all, it is very important to review the data that you have in your systems, and to review it comparing it with the SAFTI schema, because you have to be able to see whether you have the data that the tax authorities are requiring for this file. If you don't have it, then you have to find ways to bring it to your systems and be able to report it, because the mandatory data, it's mandatory. If a company would not submit the mandatory data requested by the tax authorities, then the submission would be disregarded, and the tax authorities will consider that the company did not submit the SAFTI file, and further on will apply the respective fines, and will take this into consideration when choosing where to go to check from a fiscal perspective the taxpayers. So this is very important. Make sure that you check your data, and if you don't have it, you have to brainstorm and how to bring it to report it to the tax authorities. Further on, when you have the data, you have to be able to map it as per the requests of the tax authorities, and be sure that you comply with the nomenclature that the tax authorities have published on their website. Then, depending on these two steps, you have to choose the best technical solution and to implement it. This is for your business, because taking into consideration of how can you bring the data in the XML file of the tax authorities, you may choose a tool that can help you in this respect. On the market now, there are a lot of tools that are structured for different types of businesses and for different types of needs, but you have to know what you need before you implement this solution. And last but not least, deployment and the go live. Before submission of the statement, test it, because it's very important to have data reconciled and correct and complete. So as we have only 12 minutes and for questions as well, I will let the floor to my colleague Cosmin. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, you can call me or you can write me on the email of the slide. Have a nice day.
Hello, I'm the last presenter in this webinar, so I'll try to be quick. If anything from my short presentation sounds interesting to you, my details are on the slide. Do please call. How can we help? Right now, we are helping companies cope with financial reporting complexities deal with their audit issues, and help them prepare for maybe an IPO. The services we are presenting to you today, we are already offering to some of our clients, and we believe that will recommend us to you. Our core competence is financial reporting. We are helping companies dealing with difficulties they face, meeting their financial reporting requirements. Whether it is statutory or IFRS accounts, or conversion between statutory and IFRS, or even maybe Turkish GAAP, we can help you with preparation of a whole set of financial statements, or deal with specific issues such as factoring contracts, analysis of digitalization contracts for capitalization, or any other accounting issue you may face. We can also help you with trainings on IFRS versus statutory differences, on revenue standards, leases, or any other type of trainings you may consider helpful for your accounting team. Sometimes there's a gap in your team, and we can help you with that, especially in an economical environment where specialized resources are scarce, and you may find yourself in need of a highly specialized resource that can jump very quickly into your accounting team at any level, from junior to CFO, and help you as long as you need. We already had very successful engagements, one for a position of a CFO in a big listed telecom company, and another one on a reporting specialist on an oil and gas production company. Sometimes you may face a very challenging accounting issue that you might need consultation in order to make sure you are taking the right choice, and you are presenting it the way it should be in the financial statements. And we can help you with technical accounting advice. We can provide you with assistance on complex accounting matters, ranging from impairment of financial or non-financial assets, supporting going concern assumptions, financial instruments, again, complex accounting standards as leases or revenue, or any type of accounting issue you may face, whether it's IFRS or statutory. Another service that we are proud of is the financial audit readiness. If this is your first external audit, or if you want to work towards a clean audit report saying that maybe you have some qualification in your existing audit report, or you just need resources to help you with the audit and be prepared, we can help you through this process and act like an interface between you and the external auditor. We can work together with you to make external financial audit a less disruptive process. We all know that when the auditors came by, everybody's it's busy with providing information for them and explaining different matters to them. Another priority for us is sustainability. Our expectation is that sustainability will grow exponentially, and we need to be prepared for this. From 1st of January 2022, the taxonomy EU regulation defined the activities that substantially contribute to sustainability, and imposes some disclosures in the financial statements. The mandatory sustainability reporting will become more complex and elaborate, and we can help you navigate through this. Another requirement is the SF reporting. As you probably know, all listed companies must comply with ESEF requirements, which means they need to have a specialized software to be able to tag the financial statements according to the taxonomy. We have a partnership with a software provider, and we can help you get in touch with some of them and choose the best solution for you. We can also help you going through the process of tagging the financial statements in order to be compliant with ISEF reporting. In addition, we can help you with everything related to accounting, from redesigning the financial closing process, considering different reporting needs of the company, designing controls of financial function, or assess if your company is ready for listing at a public offering or listed at a stock exchange. We also have experts that can help you with pension benefits reports and other actuary requirements. Some of you may offer or have pension benefits in your labor contracts, and we can help you with the computation of pension provisions. That's all from me. I tried to be as quickly as I could, and I will move to the questions and answers sections. Thank you.
Okay, so I've seen that we we received one question. What are the mandatory data required by SAFTI? I hope that I was able to present to you a structure of such data. There are around 250 mandatory elements, and this is not possible to be discussed in such a short period of time. So we can send, if you wish, the schema published by ANAF containing all the mandatory data.
I believe, Victoria, you made a good job, or we made a good job by explaining that this is a very comprehensive data set that is requested by the authorities. So I believe like not only knowing the areas, each areas, but our audience should have some sort of software support to be able to achieve this reporting requirements, actually. So from that perspective, we highly recommend our clients to approach the providers to understand what sort of software can serve their purpose.
Yeah, it's not something that can be done manually. Exactly.
I believe we have one more question, right?
Do we have some feedback from the some major software providers in the market that they are going to update their how to say sought for these new requirements? Did you have any discussions with them, or do you think that it's the best option to have an how to say individual intervention from each company side?
The idea is that indeed the big software providers are starting to work on this tool, beginning with this month, because this month the legislation was clarified. However, based on our experience, standardized software that extracts the data from the ERP in most cases would not suffice, because most taxpayers don't have all the data in their ERP. They have also data in their ancillary systems, and the ERP software only extracts the data from that particular system. So if you perform the XMLA only with that data, your statement will be incomplete. So this is why you should see whether or not you have the data in your ERP system in order to decide what kind of tool do you need to perform this XML file, as this cannot be done manually.
Yeah.
We have 1 minute, and the screen will pop.
So maybe it's time to say thank you to the audience for their patience. Güven Bey, would you like to say something as a final words?
As a final words, as you said, you have done a great job. Thank you very much, all team. Each and every information was very useful and precious. Thanks to Deloitte once again, cooperation with TIAD, and as TIAD we have some, as I said, incentives in terms of the correcting some things, or we are coming up with some opinions, and we would appreciate your support in those incentives, if you also consider that they are applicable. Burçin and all team, thank you very much, and thank you to all participants. Next time we will see with another issue coming up with the let's say what's bringing us the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Güven Bey. Thank you very much for providing us such platform and connection to the Turkish business community here. So we are looking forward to stay in touch. And I would like to thank to all of the speakers here. They did a very good job by explaining certain facts. If you have further questions, if you want to reach any of us, you can just, page me or any of the colleagues here. We will be more than happy to support you. As a side notice, you may miss certain parts of the webinar. Don't worry. We will share the content, this video with TIAD, and they will be publishing it in the YouTube, and we will also sharing this content in our personal social media as well. So thank you very much again, and enjoy the rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye.